Welcome to Pulp Mythos. I'm Brian here with Larry and Spencer, and we're going to be discussing The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, episode number 3, Power Broker. Although I don't think we saw the Power Broker, but maybe we did. We'll talk
Maybe
about
we
that.
did, yeah.
Maybe we did. If you've not hit the sub button or the bell, please do so. Leave a comment, hit the up vote, and we have Zemo. Zemo is broken out. My favorite part about him being broken out is the fact that we get the whole sequence of we get the Winter Soldier or Bucky talking to Sam about how it will be done, and we're getting the flashes of it. And you're thinking, and at least I was like, oh, this is how they're going to do it, but it's not going to go well. Something's going to be wrong. But in fact, that whole sequence was actually happening. And Zemo just walks in. He's like, yeah, I'm out. And I thought it was a flash of it's sort of like the Ocean's movies where they'll sort of run through what the heist is supposed to be, or what the plan is supposed to be, but then it goes wrong, when they actually do it. But did y'all see it that way, or was it just me that I thought that was a not actually happening when it was happening? Him getting broke, or him breaking himself out with Bucky's help.
I thought it, like you said, it was one of those things where this is the plan, this is what we're gonna do. And then I kept waiting for something to go wrong, but for it to happen the way it did was brilliant. And, I've been giving Anthony Mackie like a lot of shit because I don't like him, but I think I just don't like him as a lead character, because in this episode, it was far better. And I think it was just the balance of the characters. And I don't remember the gentleman's name who plays Zemo, but he's in Glorious Bastards. He's in a lot of things, but
his name is Baron.
I loved every scene he was in this episode, and I just think he's a good actor. So playing off of him more, I think strengthened this episode a lot for me. And this episode was probably my favorite out of the ones, even though storyline wise, it did the least to push the story forward. It was still my favorite episode.
I agree. There's something added to the dynamic with Zemo, and I did think it was happening in real time. However, though I did think there was the possibility for something to go wrong, like we might have a moment in a bit of comedy, like where he's mentioning one other step or something that happens, and it doesn't happen exactly the way that he said. I thought that might have happened, because but I was pretty sure that was happening in real time. But Zemo definitely adds something to there's a lot of chemistry there between the three of them. And in fact, I'm not sure. I think it was you, Brian, who said it, that that this needed to be their dynamic since episode 1. And I'm thinking maybe it would have been best to have this mystery for for Shield. Well, I guess it's Sword at this time and place. At this point, to have some idea that this is what's going on, and we should have started with, them knowing that Zemo,
yes,
in the same way that Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs has a little bit of insight, knowing that Zemo would have some insight into this, and releasing him into the custody of Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
It should have been a trio, and it should have opened with, we need to solve this, and he can help, and you guys are the only ones that can do it together. And they're like, no, and then it should have been a trio from the first episode.
This should have been episode 1.
Yes.
Yeah, agreed. And it should have been this episode 1, 100%. And then we even get more drama when we have, the new Captain America step in and everything, because, now they've appointed him, they put him in charge of this because, they felt that, Sam and the Winter Soldier weren't handling it effectively. So, they hand over custody of Zemo to them, and now you have the point where these dudes go renegade, which they kind of are right now, and they with Zemo fight off the current Cap and Battlestar, and then we also have a good reason for them to go to Madripoor, that's through Zemo's tips, and also that's the place where they'd be safest. Maybe they're aware of Agent 13 being there. There's a number of ways you could have played it if you started this out with Zemo. But it's just there's just so much chemistry between the three of them, that it would have been the better way to start this series.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would have been better. I think it would have been better.
That it would have been the better way to start this series. that it would have been the better way to start this series. that it would have been the better way to start this series. that it would have been the better way to start this series.
1,000,000%. Yeah, we had talked about it, but 1,000,000% agree. After seeing this episode, like you said, Spencer, the dynamic between Sam and Bucky was just way better in this episode. Even the way they interacted, I liked better. Um,
That's fine.
Zemo was great. It clicked in a way that it didn't in the last two, and the fact that you spent an entire episode, the first episode, not even having Sam and Bucky together was stupid as well. So
Yeah.
the more I think about it, the more I said I thought it was an okay episode, and it was, but the more I think about what it could have been, I'm like, you know what, I have more issues.
The quality of this episode, because it was such a good dynamic, degrades what you saw in that a little bit. Or at least that's what I'm getting from it.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
You know, I got a question for you, Brian. It's since this portrayal of Zemo is so spot on, like we talk about this all the time, how much this Zemo feels like it's actually Zemo. It's like, does he club the way you'd expect Zemo to club? Just sort of that.
Yes, actually. It's he is so perfect. As someone who enjoys Zemo storylines, this guy it's perfect, every aspect of it. You can tell that the writer is a huge fan because it's perfect. That is Zemo, and I even love the line where I'm a Baron. It's the Baron Zemo. The fact that he did come from money, the cars, all these old ass cars, because it's part of his family, his legacy, the mask, the way he dresses, every aspect of the character, his knowledge of the underworld, his knowledge of governments and agents and how everything operates. That's one of his big keys. And then even the fact that, holy shit, he can fight. He's deadly. He's dangerous. All of it is perfect. They did it right. I applaud them. You nailed this character.
I want that coat.
It was a cool coat. It was a cool coat.
But you brought up Madripoor. Let's go into that. Larry, you and I, and Spencer, maybe you too. Madripoor is a big deal in the comics, but not with these characters. So, yeah, Larry, I don't know if you want to. We might as well go into that.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about it, because it's Madripoor is a big deal, but it's a bigger thing. It's a bigger deal when you have Wolverine in there, because Madripoor kind of revolves around Wolverine to some degree. And it's it may have been better to do this or introduce this city once you have once you have the X-Men integrated into it, or use it. You could have used it to show little ways that the two universes are combined once it does happen. It would have been a little neat way to show that, okay, Madripoor is a thing now, and maybe there's Patch in the background, somewhere. Obviously Wolverine in a bad disguise. But just saying, it's odd for it to see it in this property. Like you mentioned, like I think we were saying before we started talking, you 100% associate this with, okay, this is a thing Wolverine's doing. It's more of a Wolverine thing than anybody. It would be like if you had it would be like if for the first appearance for the Red Skull, he fought Iron Man or something. Instead of Captain America, you're like, okay, yeah, the Red Skull's an iconic villain, but that's a Captain America villain. I kind of want to see Captain America go up against the Red Skull.
Well, and I think that it only bummed me out knowing that that's more of an X-Men Wolverine, tie-in, because we know that they're going to keep this separate from the movie universe. So unless they're telling us that, we talked about it last time, the West Coast Avengers, East Coast Avengers, Young Avengers. So unless they're doing X-Men on this platform, which they could, they could just, instead of doing X-Men movies, bring them in on the TV universe, which I'd be okay with. But unless they're going to do that, why do it this way? Like, why even mention it?
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like they're teasing us, similar to what WandaVision did. They teased a lot of things, but then they never really paid off. So this was basically just a way to show us where Sharon was hiding, this whole time, and also sort of where the power broker does what the power broker does. Um, but you could have picked
Broker's
any
power.
city, really. You didn't. It didn't have to be Madripoor, but they chose it. It is a comic book Marvel place. So, did y'all notice the John Wick sequence? It was straight up John Wick,
Yeah, yeah.
where they're like, "Oh, you killed them. Now there's a bounty," and now everyone's checking their phones and everything. I was like, "All right, um, sure." So Sharon Carter, she's here. She runs some kind of art gallery. She, talked about how she doesn't care about her past job. She doesn't give a shit anymore. But clearly, there's something going on. She talks to one of her people at the end, like, "Hey, there's trouble." And I think she's still an agent. I think she's undercover. Uh, it could be something even more than that. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think that makes the most sense. I mean, it not only her talking about that, her unwillingness to like she wanted to get involved, but it's almost like she's watching over them. It felt like it was really odd, and I don't know who it is that she's working for. I think that she's still on their side, but Shield is kind of gone more underground now with Nick and everybody. So I'm curious if she's trying to be underground also because that's the director she's gotten from Nick Fury and Shield and everything, or if she's working for somebody completely different. It would make the most sense to me for her to still be a part of Shield, although Shield itself is kind of gone underground at the moment. I think that would make more sense at this point in time.
Absolutely. And I think we were saying it before. I think the three of us were discussing, you know, how odd it is that she's the only one that didn't get a pardon because she's a friend of Steve's too. It's like unless Shield wanted her undercover for something, which they said no, don't pardon her. We're going to use her in Madripoor to uncover something. So clearly she's working an angle of some kind there. She's not just exiled because given her ties to the Avengers, like she could have easily gotten that pardon, I think.
Well, yeah, because her not getting the pardon could tie her into underworld type things because she'd be like, you know what, they exiled me. You know what, they're not bringing me back. You know how much that pisses me off? They basically let Bucky, this murderer, they pardon him, but they won't pardon me. It gives her clout in those kind of worlds and those kind of circles.
We get the scientist who recreated the super soldier serum, and he gives a little exposition dump where he's just like, "Hey, this is what happened." And then he's conveniently killed by Zemo. Zemo hates super powered individuals. So he kills him, to get, so that the knowledge of how to recreate it would die with him. And then it's conveniently, and I'm sort of complaining here, but follow me. Conveniently, there were only a hand, I think it's 20 vials, or there was a set number of vials that the Flag Smashers stole, and there's no more. Um, Marvel has a tendency, the MCU has a tendency to create a thing, and then they write them. They're good about it, I guess you could say. They don't write themselves in corners. they solve their problems through the writing, I guess. But it was one of those things where it's like the initial setup is like, wow, this is big, and this is going to have ramifications that are going to be felt in the franchise. But now it's been sort of shrank down to where it's like, it could be resolved in this series, and that's my complaint. Is that it feels like they'll be able to resolve this whole situation within the next 3 episodes. What do you guys think of the Super Soldier Serum resurrection and how casually they were at letting Zemo get away with the murder, which I thought was funny.
But I think that this is a tie into what we're talking about with WandaVision, though. The fact that they don't want to tie all this stuff into the MCU movie universe, them tying it up so fast makes sense, but it doesn't make it less frustrating. Like, it still pisses me off, but like I understand because this is a limited series. They're just trying to get through it real quick. and they're basically just setting up other characters for other shows to do other things, and it's frustrating.
Yeah, pretty much. And it's like you said, that because of the whole deal with the movies and the fact that they don't want you to do too much that's going to affect the movies here, they're trying to make it a little more self-contained and to not step on any toes. And it's like, oh yeah, there's just enough super soldier serum vials for the flag smashers to all have one, and for them to accidentally lose a few, and for just enough for Battlestar and current Cap to find those
Exactly.
vials, and for that big fight
maybe
scene.
one or two other, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, they have just enough to make episode 6 this epic battle between
Yeah.
20 people who have super soldier serum.
It's like, but I'm feeling like Sam and Bucky, they're gonna have to fight at their current strength because those are our heroes, and it's like, oh, how do these and so they'll be the big challenge. And again, it's the famous thing, Marvel scenario that we complain about, not just with the shows but with every movie. It's like, oh, you're fighting in a mirror image of yourself. That's the big enemy. You're the enemy, or at least an evil version of you, because it's going to be Sam and Bucky versus U.S. Agent and Battlestar. And
You're calling it?
yeah, I'm calling it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Speaking of them, they have a couple scenes, and basically, they're on the trail of Sam and Bucky, and they figure out roughly what they're doing, and that's essentially all they do this episode. Yeah, I agree. I think that's exactly where this is going. Similar to WandaVision, you have Vision versus Vision, you have Witch versus Witch. I think you'll have sort of the Cap Bucky variants fighting each other.
And even with Flag Smasher and Zemo, it's kind of a mirror image thing, because it's like, oh, you have this young naive idealist who thinks that, oh, we can give these superpowers to the people and it'll save the world and it'll make it better. And you have Zemo who's like, superheroes are bad, they're going to destroy the world, I have to stop this. So it's like, oh, okay, you're fighting your mirror opposite.
Well, it makes me wonder what they're going to do with Loki, because you're just going to have Loki fight Owen Wilson playing Owen Wilson. It just makes me less want to watch. If they do fight this, like you said, the opposites, it makes me have less hope for what the future is, because unless Mephisto and Doom and all these people become a huge part of the MCU, like the movie universe, I don't want to just see the show with people fighting themselves over and over and over. So they got to take a different route at some point, or it's going to make me just not want to watch any of them.
It's going to be that until it fails. But unfortunately, because they feel that's part of the formula for some reason. In fact, as far as Loki, it's even worse than what you're thinking, because I've got your answer for that. I mean, hell, and this is probably your spoiler for the end of the season. There's a particular reason they need Loki to go throughout time and quantum leap to different places. Because the big bad for Loki is Loki.
He's got Bacula. They're gonna quantum leap.
I'd be into that.
Okay, that I'd be okay with. They can do it that once if it's Scott Bakula. But I have a feeling he's just gonna fight, alternate universe evil Loki, and that'll be your big fight for that series.
Do you think there's going to be a twist with the Power Broker? Because we know it. I do have a feeling that they're going to do something different with that. I don't know what. I have a feeling.
There was I'll say, much of the internet, and it surprised me because I was like, oh, I didn't think about that. The internet predicts that potentially, and I guess this is a possibility given what we've been shown, but does it make sense given this character's character traits? They predict that Sharon Carter is the Power Broker.
be.
That's how I feel about it. That's absolutely how I feel.
It's one of the but I would the
I would
only
need, I would need like a half an episode for them to explain what happened in the 5 years
Yes.
yeah
to understand why she did it. Because I'm not against her being the power broker, but I need an explanation because for her to, we know she's Agent 13, and for her to become the power broker, I'm going to need some kind of explanation.
Yeah, and in last Captain America movie, she was very much Agent 13 and seemed to have no ill intentions whatsoever. So for her to be the power broker now, it needs to make sense. There needs to have been an agenda of some kind, something
I
that we're
also
trying to.
wouldn't if she was, why didn't she take the formula? That also would be a little odd to me.
Yeah,
Because she clearly didn't. I mean, unless she was hiding it, she didn't have abilities. In this episode.
right.
Driver
Because she's
price.
hit people with sticks and everything, and
Yeah.
but
Supply and demand. It drive the price if there's only like 6 of them.
We got a few scenes with the flag smashers. The one in particular, the one I guess important one being them killing people. They burned down this building and there were a bunch of guys like tied up in it. And the leader, I guess she is Flag Smasher, was just basically like, this is what we got to do. And it was as deep as that. And I was like, okay. So you sort of have you have the Flag Smashers and then you have, which they're seem weaker and weaker every episode. I'm like, oh man, you are not building them up properly. But okay.
it's like, are you sure you got the right serum? 'Cause
And then you have obviously the power broker situation, but that's all they really had with them. Do y'all have any thoughts on those characters, or do you think maybe that there is more to them than I'm thinking, or what do you think?
I think it's just they feel like a plot device to move the plot forward. That's it. They don't feel like an actual villain or anything.
I think they should have focused more. If you were really going, because the idea is cool. The world was better during the blip. I think that's a cool ass idea, but they've not done a good enough job explaining to me why.
Well, there's a lot of things that it seems like they're dancing around touching on because they don't want to touch on any sort of social issue whatsoever. Like they've been super vague about a lot of the Isaiah Bradley stuff for one, which I think ties into
It's like Isaiah who?
Yeah, exactly right. They never called him the first Captain America. As far as the experiments, all he said was they took my blood. And even that, and they even watered down his little speech in the trailer to remind you that that's what they used to make this serum. They don't really go into how extensive that was, and it's so thinly veiled that if you didn't know from reading the comics that they're trying to make a comparison to the Tuskegee experiments, then yeah, if you didn't get that from the comics, you probably wouldn't have gotten that here, and it's part of the same problem with why they shouldn't have used the power broker, not the power broker, the flag smasher, if they were going to just sort of dance around things like this, because they're not willing to elaborate on any political idea or beliefs that they have or what their particular plan is, because they don't want to draw comparisons, because they don't want to seem like they're biased against anybody, or that like they're framing anyone as the bad guy or anyone as the good guy. They're worried about framing too much to actually tell a story.
See, DC gets to work around this because all their places are made up, so they can just wear
Right.
Marvel. It's like these are real governments and things and historical, connections. And you're right. I really feel they're dancing around a lot of that stuff. I don't think they've embraced some of these storylines the way that they should. They seem like they don't want to. I don't know. They seem afraid. Similar to going back to previous films where they would touch on a subject and you're like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Well, let's explore that more. And they're like, no, we're not going to do that. They want to keep everything sort of that vanilla, very.
They're so afraid of like giving any sort of political message whatsoever, that they miss the slam dunk that is the Isaiah Bradley story.
Exactly.
That was pretty cut and clear, but they're like, oh, we don't want to offend anybody, whatsoever. So let's not touch on that. Let's not touch on that. This is a heavily, the story focuses heavily on race and injustice.
Well,
There.
unless, oh, go ahead.
Well, all I was going to end it with saying is like they claim that we're going to touch on those things pretty heavily with this series. It's like, well, you're not really touching that heavily.
I was just going to say, unless they do a Young Avengers, which they've listed like 2/3 of the characters already. Why do this? Why even bring him in? Why even bring Isaiah Bradley or Eli? There's no point. Like, unless you're going to do Young Avengers, there's no point to have even mentioned any of those characters.
Well, yeah. I mean, Isaiah does fit into the Truth storyline, which is pre-Young Avengers, but I'm pretty sure they are going to do that story. Also, the Young Avengers, because, we have so many setups now. If they don't, it'll be weird at this point. Whereas in the past, we were saying, you know what, we got Kate, who's clearly retconned to be Hawkeye's daughter in this. And we have hints at a few others. We got Ant-Man's daughter. Okay, so that's two. And so we were thinking maybe, but now we got most of the team at this point. So I think there's very little chance that we're not getting.
Yeah, we got Wiccan now, and
well, they even recast
Patriot.
They even recast damn it, Ant-Man's daughter.
Yeah.
They recast her, and I think that's why they're doing it. They recasted so that they could basically have this new character who's going to be a part of the Young Avengers for a long contract. So once again, why include all these people? Why recast the character if you're not going to do that?
They set up an interesting idea in the first episode with the whole situation with the bank. And they they brought it up in this episode, but to me, like you said, Larry, if we're going to touch on racial injustice, do it. Mm-hmm. Don't dance around. Like, it seems like they want to, but they're afraid to really go there. And it's like, well, then don't even mention it if you're not going to embrace it. One thing they did do, which I mentioned like a couple weeks ago with the first episode, I pointed out. It does not make any sense to bring Zemo in unless you reference the fact that he killed the king of Wakanda. And that, that has to be addressed. If he pops up in this show, I said, there's no way Wakanda is going to let that go. Well, they addressed it. And I was very happy with that. They have sent agents. Curious to how that's going to play out because, Bucky spent some time in Wakanda and, he saw the tech. And he was able to, communicate, or it led him to one of the agents and basically saying, they're like, hey, we want Zemo. And it'll be interesting to see how he talks his way around it. Basically, maybe it's saying, hey, I need him for a little longer and then you can have him. Like, I am curious to what his decision will be. What do you guys think?
Yeah, that's a...
I don't know. It's one of those things where, we got the cliffhanger at the end of this episode where clearly they're going to tie in some of the Wakanda stuff, but without knowing who the next, we have zero idea what they're going to do with Black Panther. With Chadwick passing and, I've thrown out theories of what they could do and how they could do it, but without having any idea what they're doing, it leaves me to wonder how they're going to tie it in, because what is the importance of them tying it in? Now, I think that, like you said, Brian, they almost have to, but at what point will it have an effect on the rest of the series?
Yeah, and well, I'll say it's clearly going to have some level of effect. Well, I think it does because we're hinting at a couple of things, and it seems like with the episode count that they're trying to, get together who Zemo is fairly quickly, but not at too rushed a pace here. I think they're gonna, like you said, that Bucky's gonna say, yeah, give me some time, we need him for this investigation. But I think and I can't remember the name of the group. The guards for the Black Panther. The Wakandan Royal Guard. They're gonna attack, and I think Zemo's gonna manage to fend them off because one thing I was mentioning last time before we started filming. Last time we talked about this was, a lot of that Wakandan weaponry is very much like something that Zemo uses. He has that sword that shoots the beams and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I imagine at some point he's likely going to be attacked by an assassin with a vibranium sword and, manage to disarm them. Keep that for himself.
I would assume that he would be aware. Now, this is where I'm curious to how they're going to play it. He would be aware that they'd be after him.
Yeah.
And so what is he going to do, and how, or has he already prepared or thought about this, or does he figure, Bucky will protect him as long as he's valuable? And I don't know. I am, that is an element I am curious how they're going to do it.
The way we framed him when we saw him for the first time in this series was, he's in prison and he's playing chess, and I think we all kind of just sort of came to the conclusion that this potentially symbolizes that he's already set some pieces up. And I think that is one of them. I think he set up this whole thing. In fact, I go as far as to say that there's a pretty good chance that Zemo is the power broker, given the story we've been presented with here. The experiments that happened on Isaiah Bradley were after they, wrongfully sent him to prison and everything. Zemo's in a prison. Maybe he's brokered a deal with, he's heard something, or he's brokered a deal with certain guards, or he's done this behind bars somehow. But I feel like he set up a lot of what's happening. Like you said, he's probably aware. He's probably well aware.
I think you're giving them too much credit.
Yeah, you may be right. But I'm thinking of like some Brubaker stuff here. It's based on and yeah, it's not as, doesn't feel as much like a Brubaker property as the last Captain America movie, but they're playing it pretty close.
I'm saying that that would be interesting. I'd be into that, but I don't think that's what they're going to do. But
that's not what,
who knows?
I did say that as a maybe. There's a chance.
I don't think there's enough time. There's not enough episodes left.
I was just going to say, I feel that's more likely than the Sharon Carter thing. And maybe I'm wrong. And if it is Sharon Carter, it's part of some sort of plan that Nick Fury has.
What if it's Nick Fury? Or Skrull leads into Secret Invasion.
Yeah, could be. They have the tech for that.
What if Nick Fury's the power broker?
Like they're putting too much weird lore on top of everything he does. It's possible, but Nick Fury is selling superhuman serum from the moon.
It's a Skrull, and that's how we get Super Skrull.
Yeah, it's a Skrull disguised as Nick Fury.
Yeah.
We're fighting another secret war.
Well, we got Secret Invasion coming up in, I don't know, a year or so, whatever.
Yes, but if that was the case, I would be okay with that. As much as I wouldn't like it, it would at least tie into some other property to where it had some significance, as opposed to now where it's just this one-off 6-hour movie that doesn't have an impact on anything, which would be okay if Marvel hasn't set us up where every movie has an effect on another movie in some way, shape, or form. So with them not doing that now, it's almost like a letdown or a disappointment with things not tying into each other.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. We got 3 left. We'll see how it plays out. This was my favorite of the 3.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
Any other thoughts on this episode?
No.
All right. We will see you guys next time. Thanks for listening, and yeah.
Bye.
Bye.